Well, what a difference a week makes. It's episode 17 of the Football Pod, and Kerry have been knocked out of the championship. Tyrone have done it again. They're into the All-Ireland final, and they're playing Mayo. Paddy, I'm going to start with Andy one more time this week. How does it feel to be favourites for the All-Ireland down in Mayo?
I'm not sure it's happened in my lifetime. Maybe 12, 13 we were thereabouts, maybe favourites-wise, but I think after that was all with Dublin. But I've often said that the one I always feel that got away was 2012 against Donegal, not because we were any better or any worse than Donegal. It's because both teams came into it with the same, like Donegal at that time was 92 to 2012. We've obviously 70 years built up now since we won one, but both teams were on the even keel. And we said actually before last week's semi-final, there was very few All-Ireland medals floating around. So this is, and Tyrone sniffed that, and Mayo sniffed that, and it's all to play for.
Jeez, Paddy, he was way more excited 5 minutes ago, wasn't he?
I know, yeah. He's gone back into his shell there when we got live. No, I just said, it's incredible. Like every single person was looking at Dublin, Kerry, All-Ireland final from day one of this season. You'd have got some odds on it being Mayo against Tyrone. But the two semi-final performances, look, they had it, both games had everything, going to extra time, go down to the wire, and Saturday was just a brilliant game. And we weren't sure what Tyrone were going to bring, what shape they were going to be in, what impact COVID was going to have. We weren't sure about Kerry, having not played a game in 5 weeks and strolled through the Munster Championship. But it was a phenomenal performance by Tyrone and well worth the victory. Same as Mayo the week before against Dublin, two fully deserved winners. And it's got a tight one to call. Are Mayo favourites?
I think it was one book. Donica Boyle was tweeting earlier on that it was something crazy. They got it so wrong with the Kerry Tyrone thing that he couldn't believe the odds. I think it was 11-8 Mayo wrong, but it should be much closer to evens. Andy,
at the start of last week, Tyrone were 15-1 to win the All-Ireland. Before they were 12-1, and now they're in. So
who's making these calls? You know. Anyways, Andy, at what stage?
Someone is getting sacked in Paddy Power, aren't they?
Yeah.
At what stage did you realise, right, Tyrone are here?
I think it was fairly evident. I genuinely thought at half-time, I thought Kerry had enough. I thought between Tyrone's first goal, McKenna's first goal, and half-time, I thought Tyrone looked a bit on the ropes, a tiny bit. Came out, obviously we've talked about kicking it into the whole canal end, the Davin stand end. There's huge advantage there. And I just thought Kerry would have enough pushing through, but they could never kill it. Even when Sean O'Shea runs through there, when Clifford goes down with the first cramp, a clinical pass there kills off Tyrone. They don't get it. Tyrone straight up the pitch getting a goal. And I think Tyrone's, and myself and Paddy will go into it now in the next few minutes, Tyrone's tactics were so good, lads. It literally can't be underestimated how good how much of a chance their tactics give them. And that's what tactics and coaching and good management is about. It's about giving your team the best opportunity to be in with a chance of winning coming down the stretch. And that's what Dewar and Logan did. And it's, I just thought it was amazing. I actually rewatched the Sky coverage there this morning. And Canavan looked like a man that wanted to play. He was ready. It was so funny because I'd watched Sean Kavanagh and Pat Spinane and the boys going at it, and Donny obviously in the studio on Sky, and they were all excited. But Canavan was ready, like, and he had this little pink shirt on him, and he was ready for
Yeah.
But like, it was so funny. You see the passion of a past player, probably the greatest they ever had, and his son playing. And he was ready, and he was like, he was nearly trying to tell Dewar and Logan, because obviously he was doing it with the 21s a couple of years ago. Tell Morgan to stop kicking the ball long, tell him to play it short. He was nearly, I'd say he was on the phone to them in the studio at the time.
Paddy, before we get into the tactics, why couldn't it click for Kerry? Did something go wrong in their heads this week? Did Tyrone get under their skins a wee bit? Because it just didn't feel right. It didn't look like the Kerry that we'd seen all year long.
No, that's a credit to Tyrone. Tyrone didn't allow Kerry to get into that rhythm. And I was very similar to Andy. I thought, even though Tyrone were a point up at half time, that third quarter, Kerry outscored Tyrone 5-2. And it was just what we expected. Kerry are going to click into gear. We're waiting for it. Clifford was having an absolute sensational game, but no one else in their Kerry forward line really was. And that's, Andy's at the nail on the head. That's the whole point of your tactics. That's what Tyrone. I said last week, I expected them to park the bus to try and frustrate Kerry. They didn't do that. It was an incredibly brave setup by Logan and Dooher. But those tactics won them the game. They did not allow Kerry to get that kick passing game going. They didn't allow Paddy Clifford to have the influence of Darren Moynihan and these guys who we rightly praised through the National League and in the Munster Championship. But Tyrone simply did not let them put their stamp on the game. And that was down to their tactics. It was down to the athleticism of Tyrone. We touched on it, their conditioning. 90 minutes on the clock. And there was 9 minutes of extra time. So you're barely playing 100 minutes. And those boys were still going flat to the mat. So their setup, their matchups, their tactics didn't allow Kerry to play that game. And that's a disappointing thing for Kerry. I feel like they were out-taught on the sideline, and to not expect that, and like they were caught, but like I say, Tyrone just fully deserved it in the end. So,
but Tommy, if I was going to ask you, what didn't click for Kerry? So like
it felt like their front six didn't click.
They scored 22 points, right?
15 from 2.
Clifford goes off after the 70 minutes. Or Paddy Clifford gets 2. The boys get 15 or 16 between them. So that's 18 or 19 points, or 17 or 18 points from your 3 forwards. That's not bad. So what didn't click was, how did Tyrone try to take them out? And Tyrone identified, and even Sean Campbell has said it about Gooch and Declan O'Sullivan at halftime. He goes, sometimes we just accepted that Gooch was going to score 3 or 4 or 5 points. And he said, we played with it. So if they accepted, right, Ronan, your job is to mark Clifford and it's to keep him as quiet as you can possibly. I think Hampsey bet Sean O'Shea, if I'm being honest. I don't know. But like, your job is to keep him as quiet as you can. Do as best you can with him. Frank Burns, get in to help him as much as he can, and then away we go. Your man is an outstanding player. Clifford is just different sauce altogether, right? And so they let him do that. But over the course of the game, Kerry had 2 ways to attack all year. And their 2 ways to attack was get the ball to Clifford and O'Shea and Paddy Clifford and the boys. But their running game was their second most important way. They'd scored 114 from their defence and midfield coming into the game. And all their assists. Paddy identified Gavin White coming off the line, jinking against Tim, in and off to David Clifford, top corner. In the course of the 70 minutes in the first game, they had 1 assist and no score. Or 1 score and 1 assist. Paul Murphy got an assist for Paddy Clifford, and Tom O'Sullivan got the rebound when David Clifford went down injured. Okay, so that's huge. So they went McGeary. Paddy's been talking about transition. McGeary, Sludden, Meyler. Absolutely outstanding performances. And what they did was, yes, Clifford is going to score. Yes, Sean O'Shea is going to score. But we are going to stop this running game. And how many times did we see Kerry driving through the middle? And people think that's stupid football. And in a way it is. But like, that's what they've been doing all year. Sean O'Shea, for his first 4 points against Clare, ran around Clare fellas and kicked it over the bar. But the Tyrone fellas were ready. Frank Burns sat right in the middle and they just turned them over. And there was a key one, right, just before half time. They just ran everything. So they ran, lost, their 18th attack, ran the ball, lost it, 19th attack, ran the ball, lost it, 20th attack, ran the ball, lost it, 21st, ran and kicked it and lost it. Long kick, Clifford scores, but then they run and lose again. And that was about, out of 8 attacks, they got 1 return out of it. And that's that second quarter, just before half time, when I thought, viewing it first time, Tyrone were on their knees. But it was nearly like Ali against Foreman, when Foreman was punching, and he was tiring himself out. And Tyrone just kept themselves in the game. And when the legs were there, lads, to be had, there was only one team that had them.
Let's stick with that for a second, right? Surely Kerry can recognise that going in at half time. The stats that you just picked out there, like, because you could see it. I didn't know it was that amount, but you could see the running game wasn't working. Why didn't Kerry change it?
Who did they have to kick the ball? Who kicks the ball for them?
Paddy Clifford is the main man, isn't he?
Who kicks the ball? They've identified onto him. Who's the other kicker? David Moran, who was sitting on the 45, protected. None of the rest of them are kickers. Darren Moynihan is a bad kicker, but as soon as he kicks that ball over the sideline, you nearly see him apologize. He has 2 assists in the first half out of 9 points. and they take him off at half time.
They whipped him off, yeah.
He's a free one and he's an assist for a Clifford score. And I'm just thinking, who else kicks the ball?
So
Gavin
would you
White wants to run every ball. Tom Sullivan wants to run every ball. Murphy's a good kicker, to be fair.
Yeah.
The ball. So when you've no kicker on the pitch, then it becomes a struggle. And then in the heat of the battle, you need someone to step back, take control of the game. That's tough to do.
But I think, Andy, that's the Tyrone identified that. That's what we're talking about, the preparation that they had. We knew they would have a game plan coming into this game, that the 3-4 weeks, the extra couple of weeks to prepare for this. And the thing I would challenge Kerry on is Tyrone identified this game plan. This is what Kerry, like I say, this is their A game. Their kick passes on the ball. So let's take them out. Let's get Conor Meyler to mark Paddy Clifford and just be all over them. And if you look, if the high camera footage on Sky you're looking at it, Tyrone are literally man to man all over the pitch. They do not give space for Kerry to breathe. And if there's times where Kerry are soloing the ball and there's a Tyrone fella and he's just looking straight at his man, he doesn't care what's happening with the ball. He is tagging his individual man. And that's a very, very brave way to play against Kerry.
How difficult is that, Paddy? Because, we might have expected them. Even last week, we were thinking maybe they'd sit back.
I didn't think they'd play that way. I thought they would bring everyone back and try and put 13 or 14 guys inside the 45 and frustrate Kerry that way. That's one way to frustrate them. And it's easier to do that. The style play they had, where they're tagging individual players all over the pitch, is incredibly difficult to do because, one, you need serious athleticism and physicality to do it. And the second thing, it's so high risk because if one player switches off, and it's usually a corner forward or it's one of the forwards, that's the overlap gone. And that's Kerry can steam forward. We used to do it with Dublin when we played Mayo. We used to play that way. And it was so challenging because you knew it was an individual battle. You had to tag your man and you had to trust that every other one of your teammates is going to do it. Because like I say, it's so high risk. If someone switches off, or dives in for a tackle and now a forwards tackle, it creates the overlap. And there's Gavin White, and there's Paul Murphy, and there's someone has time to kick the ball in to Clifford and O'Shea and these guys. Whereas Tyrone were so diligent in that style of play. And like I say, it takes balls to set up that way. And that was an unbelievably impressive thing. And then you got to rely on your matchups to be right. And that's why Tyrone identified that.
They nailed their matchups.
Oh, it was brilliant. It was like I say, I agree. I thought Hampsey got the better of Sean O'Shea, I feel. Clifford, like Ronan McAfee's thinking actually might have had the worst game, gets up and kicks a point himself. Clifford still scores 8 points, you know what I mean? That's the challenge there. But I thought Tyrone were a smarter team in how they went about it. They're more street smart. Like I said, we touched them. They played 20 minutes in the second half with 14 men. And they just slow the game completely down. There's injuries and guys are going down. They were just seeing the bits sharper and smarter all over the pitch. And that's the credit you have to give to the two boys.
McStay rightfully pointed out in the Sunday game, or whoever the stats person was that got to clock it up, that it was only 12 out of 20 minutes or 13 out of 20 minutes that the Tyrone lads were off the pitch. So we might come back to that again. I want one of you to explain to me about how Hampsey got the better of Sean O'Shea, because when you look at it in paper, 8 points, I know a lot of them are frees, weren't bad, but I want to know how Hampsey got the better of him. For me, Conor Meyler was probably my man of the match. I know McGeary got a savage amount of possessions, but Meyler's job that he did on Paddy Clifford was just exemplary. He was the player we were talking about coming into this. Andy, when Paddy's talking there about how brave Tyrone were, and I have a feeling you were talking about Tyrone possibly setting up like this last week, were you surprised that they conceded the kick out so easily? Or was that part of the tactic to allow Kerry to get the ball, shorten their own 21 and to make them run at them from deep?
Well, I don't think you can say it was absolute tactic that Kerry would run themselves out. I don't think that's it. But they identified that Kerry don't kick the ball that often. And every kick that Kerry do is a 20, 30-yard kick. So do you know them crossfield ones that Morgan were hitting? Them block the ball. Like Kerry didn't have one of them. You have the best forward in the country at this minute. And you don't give him in one 50-50 or one where he can fight for it. I thought it was quite strange. But I was not one bit surprised that give up the kick out, because for the exact reason Paddy just said there, if Gavin White does beat McGeary at any one stage, you do need a tiny bit of cover on the weak side. So there was a lot, and Michael O'Neill was kind of doing all the time to try to fill in, not getting on a lot of ball, but you can see now why he's in that team, because wow, the work him and McKenna did was just unbelievable. But we played Kerry in Killarney in 2019. We got a schooling. We got an absolute schooling. And I remember James Warren were sitting in the hotel before the game, night before the game, and he just said, lads, they've identified our full forward line. I wasn't playing, I was on the bench. And they're just going to run us up the field. So it was Foley, Tyke, Morley, Tom Sullivan. I come on after 55 minutes. Game's finished. I come on after 55 minutes. Tom Sullivan is cramping at 55 minutes. He has ran that much that he's cramping. So they have basically identified a way of playing that we are going to run teams off the pitch. And Tyrone go, lads, they're going to try to run us off the pitch. So let them try to. So Gavin White is going, Breen is going, and all of a sudden you can see Hampsey at times leaving Sean O'Shea and just sitting into that middle channel so that they don't get a goal. Just literally leaving one of the best footballers in the country and sitting into the central channel to cut off that break, and then bang, bang, bang. And Paddy Andrews has said it since day one, and it stuck with me since day one on this podcast. They are transition footballers. Like, you basically put it through the transition. And you look at Tyrone scores. First score point from Morgan was 1 free from a turnover. The block on Sean O'Shea, block on Stephen O'Brien. So first, second, third, fourth, fifth, sixth, all transition scores from back to front.
Yeah.
The next score then was from Morgan from a monster kick out. And then their next score then was from the throw-in. But then it starts then again, transition, 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 every score. And the one that really stands out is McKenna's third goal. Paulie Clifford comes in off the line. He's running into Channel 2, where since me and Paddy started playing, and you played against Armagh Tyrone, you do not carry that ball into that D.
What did you call it? Channel 2?
Central channel, whatever you call it. Everyone would have a different name for it. But into that D, you do not carry the ball in there, because if you carry that ball in there, if you're not getting a score, you're getting smashed. Bang, he gets smashed. Frank Byrne smashing him. McGeary wins the ball, gone up the field. McGeary ends up getting the shot at the end of it. Jack Barry tries to do a kung fu kick at the end line, comes out to McKenna, who was beside McGeary when the ball is turned over, and he runs 80 yards, and bang, buries the ball in the back of the net. And with that, the game is over. And it's just, like they had planned for this. Yes, Kerry still had the chances to win it, and it was a tightrope game. But for Tyrone to have a chance, they needed a really strong plan, and they came with it, and Kerry never reacted.
Have I been sleeping on the fact that Kerry don't have that many kickers? Because growing up, you would have been told, look at the way that Kerry, the bounce pass that Kerry perfected, that you would have seen Gooch's team in the noughties using, and Dr. Croaks up to 2014, the bounce pass in the chest. They would have been looking at Cross McGlenn as a kick passing team. Coaches have always spoken about these teams growing up. But did Kerry not have that many kickers anymore?
Before Paddy comes in, because I know he's got something on that, but they have ruined that on everyone. You can't kick the ball against Dublin, because if you kick the bloody thing to them, you don't get the ball back for 3 minutes. Do you know what I mean? So the reason the likes of Kerry, Mayo and these guys don't kick much ball into their forward line anymore against Dublin, because if you actually give them the ball, the Dublin lads, Johnny Cooper's this world, and Merchant and all these guys are so good at holding on to the ball that if you give it to them, you're in trouble. So if you kick in it, it has to be 70-30 if you're kicking it against Dublin. So Kerry, again, we need to run, hold on to the ball, go through the channels and see how we get on. So that's the reason that's the reason I think they pick more of a running game now than a kicking game. Sorry, Paddy.
That makes sense. Like the Kerry team then, sorry, Paddy, the Kerry team has been built to take down Dublin, I suppose, over the last 3 years. That's what Peter Keane's been building.
You have to. If you look at it, that's who you were going to have to take down.
Yeah. Poor Peter Keane.
They've been caught again, I suppose, before getting to that hurdle as well. Like, but I think you're right. Traditionally, Kerry, their kick passing game. And to be fair, in the Munster Championship, when they're allowed to do it, and that's what the Munster Championship was, they steamroll their opposition. They can do it, but that's the beauty of what Tyrone did, and that's the structure, the setup they had. Michael O'Neill coming back, Frank Burns back there, like I say, Hampsey detail to take out Sean O'Shea. And if you look at the other big players from Kerry, like we talk about this, you always traditionally a Kerry forward line. Geaney was on the fringes of that game. Stephen O'Brien, he wins 3 scoreable frees, but again, he's on the fringes. Obviously, he gets the error with the goal, which was a big moment if they get that goal and he's standing in the square. Yeah. But Kerry's big play, David Moran as well, they were on the fringes of the game. I thought Thomas Sullivan had a brilliant game.
He was superb.
He was absolutely, particularly in the first half. Clifford was outstanding, but the rest, they couldn't really put their input on the game, and that's because of the matchups, and that's because of the intensity that Tyrone were bringing to the play. Like Geaney, he only scores a point in extra time. He's 3 misses.
Has Paul Geaney not been on the fringes all year long? Have we not been looking at Geaney and saying, "Oh, he'll come good," or they're using him in this role here? Like Geaney was being used essentially to supplement Clifford and O'Shea in the full forward line all year long.
Oh, I know, and that's like I thought he was a bit better in the Munster final, obviously against Cork, but this was Tyrone's, or this was Kerry's first big test for all of these guys, and you have to look at it as well. They are a relatively inexperienced team. Like they're relying hugely on Clifford and O'Shea for scores, who are both exceptional players, but they're young guys. And you could see absolute panic from Kerry, particularly when it got to extra time. I tweeted about this. When that game started getting more and more chaotic, that just suits Tyrone. That suits their runners. You know, Kerry are very similar in a way to Dublin, that they want structure and they want to control the game. They want to keep the ball and manage it that way. Whereas Mayo and Tyrone, because of their athleticism, because of their runners, want mayhem. They want spaces to run into. And
chaos meeting chaos in the All-Ireland final.
It'll be runners from everywhere. The teams are going to cover, I'd say each player is going to do about 15k each. But you can see in extra time, Kerry were just totally panicked. They had no focal point without Clifford. And you're looking there going, how are they so reliant still on one player? They have Tommy Walsh, Adrian Spillane, Killian Spillane, the guys coming in off the bench that we've been praising for making impact in the previous game. They just didn't get that kick. And everything there was just, you could see that's the challenge. There wasn't really a focus. There wasn't a game plan there. And as Tyrone turned them over in extra time, it's just mayhem. Like Tyrone go 1-2 to no score up. And you're thinking they're going to steamroll them. And just that momentum, very similar to the first half of extra time the week before with Mayo, where they just got a turn on them. The space is opened up, and that suits Tyrone. That doesn't suit Kerry. And that's, I suppose, the genius of their game plan, but also, like I say, their contrast Kerry's key players being on the fringes of the game, where you look at Tyrone, Matty Donnelly, Peter Hart, McGeary, Meyler. Massive influence on the game. I know Conor McKenna was actually quiet, but he comes up with
he had his moments. He had his moments
for 2 goals, you know.
Yeah. You're listening to episode 17 of the Football Pod of Paddy and Andy. To all of our loyal listeners who've been with us through every hour of the championship so far, thank you very much for tuning in. And for all our new subscribers and listeners, fair play. Welcome along to the party. If you're listening on a Tuesday, you've got us on the OTB Sports app. On a Wednesday, we're available everywhere else. And on a Thursday, you can watch us on YouTube. Andy, can I ask you about whether this game was won on the line beforehand? Did Peter Keane's decision to potentially leave Diarmuid O'Connor on the bench, start Jack Barry, who hadn't had a huge amount of minutes so far this year, bring in Darren Moynihan? To me, it looked like the Moan move at the start was a positive one. I didn't overly think about the Barry Diarmuid O'Connor one, but did you feel like Kerry possibly started the wrong team without thinking enough of Tyrone?
I think, firstly, just on Thomas Sullivan, I think he probably gave one of the best performances I've seen in the first half of football in a long time. Like, he's nearly kept a guy that's a shoe-in for an all-star. He basically kept him to 3 possessions, turned him over in 2.
He bullied him.
Yeah, I was outstanding. But now the boy stuck with McCurry, and he got a black card and still kicked 2 massive points. So it shows the faith they have in him. And as a forward, when you have that faith from the gaffer, it makes you.
But isn't that a big thing, Andy, in terms of what McCurry's done? That's the confidence that he feels he has from the coaches. Because look, there's no 2 ways about it. That first half, I don't think he touches the ball in the first quarter at all. 2 kick passes go in the second quarter and he loses them.
Yeah.
And then he has 1 positive possession the whole first half. And if you're taking Darren McCurry of a couple of years ago, or Mickey Hart's on the line. He's getting whipped off. Like, there's no two ways about it.
Mark Bradley,
For them,
Ronan O'Neill, Darrell
exactly.
Canavan, they're all on the bench.
Carl McShane is there, and to be fair, that is the confidence the coaches have in him, and you know that as a player. When you feel you have the coaches have your back, and you're right. Even though he's sort of stuck at it, and he ends up kicking 2 big points for play towards the end, but that's a year in the making. That's all his form in the National League and being trusted to go and do the job for him, because like he was being absolutely eaten alive in the first half, but it was serious balls from him. But that's the beauty of having a coach that backs you. That he could still produce the goods. And praise for McCurry, have the mentality, because easily that game was not going. We could get frustrated, but he's the man who pops up with the big scores when they need it.
Missed the first one, Paddy, from play. Missed the first one, kicks it wide, and then has the identical shot straight after it for his first point from play, and nails it. Like it was great mentality from him. But to answer your question, Tommy, wasn't one on the line. I just said a bad chill up my spine there. I go into coaching or management next year, and Paddy Andrews is here, absolutely nailing me on the football pod. No, I think in hindsight, okay, you would look back and say, should they've held Moran for 20 minutes at the end of the game? And like you've seen the legs Adrian Spillane had when he came on, absolutely unbelievable his running power. And could you have held him? But they're all hindsight, little bits and pieces in it. The truth about it is, if Kerry took their chances, they'd win the game. And that's it. If Sean O'Shea makes a cleaner handball to
Clifford,
even if he takes the point at that stage, you could argue they probably see out the game.
What do you mean, if Clifford doesn't get injured in the collision?
Yeah, do you know, there was a lot of stuff there. No, Tom O'Sullivan kicks the point, but the momentum shift in that, lads, is huge. Paddy Clifford's in his hand pass for a point in the last minute. If he takes it, they probably win the game. So there's lots of moments there where Peter Keane is he's looking back on the tapes tonight, and he's thinking, Joe, we didn't do much wrong there. We put the guys in the position to win the game. Tommy Walsh has a tackle attempt on Matty Donnelly for McShane's goal, lads. Like, Peter Keane can't control that, if I'm being honest with you. He can't. And Tommy Walsh has to do better in that situation. Literally has to do it. He doesn't bang. Even you take a foul, you do something. But you don't let Matty Donnelly, after 69 minutes of Gaelic football on a fresh guy, Tommy Walsh does not go in for a hit there. He has to tackle on hit. So there's huge things there where Peter Keane is saying, geez, we did a lot right. And if we took our chance, we win the game. On the flip side of that, Dúran and Logan absolutely nailed it, lads. I was looking at it. The Peter Donnelly, obviously, who I'm biased in saying it because he's a mate of mine, but unbelievable physical condition. The Tyrone boys, we have to say that, and they have them players anyway. Again, what Paddy said with the transition players, them guys love to run up and down. They love to do it. So he's got an easy job in that.
It was the first thing they did was make sure they had Donnelly.
Yes, yeah. But he was with them with the 21s as well. So like they've history, and he won. As he, like, you know, his pockets are full of All Ireland medals too. So like they know him from years by. He won minors, 21s, seniors with the lads. Okay, but then they've Joe McMahon on the sideline. Like, Joe was an exceptionally smart footballer, to the point where he was probably in 08 going to win an All-Star 12. And for the final, they put him back on Donny or Tommy Walsh. Remember Justin and Joe?
Yeah.
And probably pegged away as All-Star, but picked up his third little bit of silver in his pocket, happy out with it. But for a player to be able to, Paddy will tell you, in the same season, to go from number 12 to number 3, it's just, your mentality has to be different. So they have all these guys around the place. They made huge decisions. I didn't think they were going to win. I genuinely, I have to say, I didn't think they were going to win. But we were laughing here last week. They're going to come with a plan. And by God, did they come with a plan, lads. And geez, they gave the team some chance to win that game. Now, the players still had to go and execute. McKenna still needed to be in the right place to get the two goals. But they executed the plan to the letter, and fair play to them. What I'm asking you guys to do now is not to give them a reason to get their backs against the wall again, because let's just praise them for the next 2 weeks leading into the game.
Can't be asking us that, Andy. You can't be asking us that. We're going to stay neutral here. And listen, Andy or Paddy, Andy's been getting a lot of credit in the last couple of weeks for getting a couple of calls right. You've had a tough time since the Dublin game. Your predictions have been a little off.
Yes.
But we have to give it to Paddy. Tyrone were Paddy's team at the start of this podcast. Didn't you pick out Tyrone, or was it Andy who picked out Tyrone? If I remember that wrong, weren't you really?
I'm gonna claim that. Yeah.
Or was it you, Andy?
I don't think that's right, but I'm gonna claim it.
Yeah.
Probably Andy though.
Yeah,
Andy, was it you who picked out Tyrone at the start of the podcast?
I did for Ulster. I didn't for the All Ireland final, if I'm being honest.
Okay.
No, it's actually because I remember now. I tipped Donegal. I've had an absolute howler. It was all going so well.
The subs for Tyrone, Paddy, like McShane comes in, right, and one of the first things that happened to him is he takes off and Jason Foley dispossesses him. That's a couple of minutes in after he comes on, but the impact that man has, the presence that he brought when he came on. In fairness, Darragh Canavan should have bloody buried that goal, and maybe he should have buried that goal.
Yeah.
But he was buzzing around and he created danger anytime he got near it as well. Tiernan McCann obviously made a big influence. Kerry's bench was stacked, but the impact that Tyrone bench made, and maybe again in hindsight because winners write the script, but it seemed like they made a massive impact at Tyrone bench.
Yeah, and that's what we've been praising them all through the chapter, that the squad, and that's been a running theme for the teams that are successful in this championship. You need, with the intensity the game is played at, you need guys coming in off the bench. We've been praising Kerry, but they just did not have that influence that Peter Keane would have been looking at. And to be honest, I thought McShane was struggling. he doesn't seem to be moving as freely.
Didn't look at it.
But like I say, that's the mentality again. He comes on, he gets the goal after the rebound off Canavan, and in extra time, then he kicks those 3 points. And the spaces started to open up. Kerry kind of lost their structure. I think it that brilliant turnover. Matty Donnelly wins, puts his body on the line, and they break, and McShane taps it over. But it is easy in hindsight saying, look, Tyrone's bench, they did everything right. Kerry's bench, like say Tommy Walters a couple of plays, and obviously the one at the end where he's probably forcing that shot as well. They just didn't get that impact up. But again, that's because Tyrone just didn't allow them to do it. And Andy, you'll notice when you're coming into a game like that, at that intensity, you're coming in off the bench, like it's very hard to hit the ground running. Like that, the hits going in that game, the speed of play, it can be very difficult to get up to speed straight away. And that's why I just think Kerry struggled with that across the board in that regard. So it's going to be interesting for the final as well when you're looking at the impact the Mayo bench had the last day, the impact the Tyrone bench had. It's going to play a massive, massive role in the final again, because like I say, these are two teams that will sprint flat out for 70, 75, 80 minutes as well. But that was ultimately, I think that was a key factor for them, that Tyrone's guys, particularly like say McShane, once he settled into it, Canavan causing issues, and Kerry just didn't have the answers themselves. Sorry,
Andy, I forgot where I was going with the management question when I led Paddy down that route with the subs. It was Fergal Logan who I'm fascinated to figure out how Logan and Dooher are working together. And I know Donnelly has a big impact as well in terms of the SC and the Gaelic football coaching. But Logan afterwards sort of credited Dooher for the in-game decisions, that Brian essentially makes the calls on the line during the match. So whether that's Logan who's kind of overseen it afterwards, I'm not fully sure of the makeup there, but it seems to really work. Have you any insight, Andy, into how a joint management role can work? Because we've seen it in soccer, say, flop at certain levels.
Yeah, I know.
Can it work?
No, myself and Mike Solon are doing it for the club now at the minute, but it's like I'm playing. So
Johnny Giles.
Yeah, so yeah. So I'm playing. So he makes all the sideline decisions. But you'd have a lot of the decisions kind of made in your head. Like McShane would have been coming on. Like McShane came on when they were down to 14 men. McShane was coming on at 43, 44 minutes. Regardless what happened. Do you know what I'm saying? Because it changes the focal point of their attack and away they go. But it's just it's like everything. You just need to be so assured of your roles, so assured that, listen, Brian, if there's something there that's happening, I'm sure he's in his ear and talking. Joe, you often seen Jim Gavin talking to someone. I'm sure he was talking to Declan Darcy when they were on it. And like, yes, they're not called joint managers, but I'm sure there was a lot of influence coming from what was being said as well. And you've seen him talking out to Joe McMahon in the stand, and you've seen these guys. So you'd see James Horn the next day Kieran McDonald will be behind them, going down to the, giving them information, and they jump. So it's called a joint management, but if you're absolutely clear on your roles, I think it is. But again, this all comes down to, it will be successful if Tyrone wins All Ireland. The James Horan one will be successful if James Horan wins All Ireland. That's the key diameter. That's the thing. And I think, if I'm being honest, first bit of fight and talk, I think Mayo have the advantage on that, because I see James Horan, and I seen it coming into the semi-finals. I thought the big advantage Mayo had is that there's the best manager left in the competition. I thought I think we said earlier on in the year, Desi would be something else if he wins back-to-back All-Irelands, with the team kind of transitional through with all the boys leaving. Peter Keane had huge pressure on him, and Brian Dewar and Logan are in their first year. I think Horan's experience gives Mayo a huge advantage in 2 weeks' time. Huge advantage. It's his 4th All-Ireland. It's his 7th year in charge. He's them boys now for a certain length of time. We played there last year. I think he's got a huge advantage moving in.
It's hardly just experience. That's hardly the reason why you're just saying that, Andy, though. It's not just experience, because Dewar and Logan, as Paddy said earlier in the podcast, getting that win against Donegal, that first big win makes everyone buy in and believe. But you must be backing Horan, this fight talk, for more than just the experience. What else is he bringing that's a little different on the sideline?
Horan is a really pragmatic fella. He changes there against Galway at half time. I would honestly say, I think he got his matchups absolutely totally wrong against Galway in the first half. Boom, he changed them second half. The game changes with it. Against Dublin, we were too stuck on the D, making sure Dublin didn't score goals. We no outlet at all. As soon as they changed that, his substitutions were good. The Aiden substitution, which I wouldn't have agreed with at the time, but obviously worked really well for him. So I just think you get that through experience. I remember looking at Malachy O'Rourke years ago, and he was with Monan, and a guy that I always kind of moving into that kind of line. He used to be with the schools teams, so he's making in-game decisions every week. I know it's only a schools game, but the substitution, the role of a sub, with the movement of a player, the changing of a centre back, that's all practice and study and knowing what you like within the players and knowing your system. And I think Horan has a huge advantage when it comes to that. Yes, Dewar and Logan and these guys and Desi and Peter, they're really intelligent football men, and obviously what Brian Dewar has done in the game stands to him massively. But when you're in that in-game decision, I just think James Horan has a bit of an advantage there.
Paddy, do you mind me asking how it worked on the sideline with Jim Gavin? Because I can imagine Darcy and say J.O. would have had a big influence on the training pitch, perhaps. But did they have a big role on the line in the middle of games as well, or did Jim Gavin make his mind up and that was his decision?
They would have had a massive role as well. Of course they did. Andy's hit the nail on the head. That's one of the key things for any coach, is you surround yourself with the right people as well. You know what I mean? And being able to trust them, because it's the games are so frantic, particularly if you're on the sideline. You want to have someone in the stand that you can say, and that's your stats guys, your analysts, whoever it is. You need to be able to trust their decisions. And Andy kind of touched on it there, not have an ego to get in the way. And that's, I love Fergal Logan's chat after saying, I do this. If Brian Dewar sees something, I trust him. I've surrounded myself with the right people that, go and make that call. And that's, I praised, I don't think James Horan gets enough praise for what he's done. And to bring Mayo back to an All-Ireland final again, and I say, whether they're favourites or not, it's going to be a very, very tight game. But the job he's done, that comes with experience. And surround yourself with the right people. So with Dublin, absolutely. Declan Darcy and Jason Sherlock had massive roles. Communicating with Jim Gavin and listen, we need to make this change, or this is what this team is doing. And to be fair, a lot of it is your preparation. You'd expect, this is the opposition's game plan. Dublin were very, very, very diligent in that regard. That we were very rarely surprised on the pitch, bar once against Donegal in 2014, where we didn't have the answers, but generally we kind of knew what to expect. But in terms of the decision making, any successful coach needs to have the right people surrounding him, and you can see that James obviously has that with Kieran McDonald, and the Tyrone boys definitely have it. And that's the challenge. You're looking at and I know Peter Keane is going to get a lot of stick, and has probably gotten a lot of stick for last year, how they failed, and then not coming up short again this year. And you're thinking, if you're being honest, I feel they were outsmarted in that game. And one of the key things for me is, if you're Peter Keane and you're Kerry, you have to expect that they're going to target Paddy Clifford, they're going to target Darren Moan, going to identify that. But on the flip side, surely Kerry are looking at going, well, we need to take out Conor Meyler and Peter Hart. These are absolute, or Kieran McGeary and Conor Meyler and Peter Hart. These are key players in their transition. And McGeary gets over 40 possessions. And he's literally the run of Croke Park. And they're thinking, surely that's a key weapon for Tyrone. He needs to be taken out of the game. And it's like we're praising Kerry praising Tyrone for getting their matchups right. And you're looking at Kerry going, they allowed McGeary, Matty Donnelly, Peter Hart to dominate that game. You know, and that's falling, I feel, with the coaches and getting your matchups and your preparation right. So that's a big challenge I'd have.
I thought the McGeary Gavin White tussle was amazing because Kerry obviously wanted Gavin White on the ball. So then he is the man that wanted the ball come out of the backs. But McGeary just was shepherding him down, bringing him into space he didn't want to go into. And then White had to recover from these lung buster runs. McGeary just kept chipping away. Yes, he made some silly decisions on the ball, but he was involved heavily in goals. You know,
he was able to, yeah.
He did a Gary Owen at one stage, I think, and ran after. But
he took a shot then, didn't he?
Yeah.
He had a couple of ropey shots now, yeah.
But after about 25k, Paddy, I'd say he was entitled to a couple of ropey shots. Yeah. It was just, I thought he was amazing. Even for the last score for McShane, unbelievable kick out from Morgan.
Yeah.
Hits McGeary on the sideline, bang, into McShane. Foley is gone, his legs are gone, and McShane tips it over the bar. Beautiful play. But the one thing I would say where I thought Kerry did get it wrong, Kerry have prided themselves on the press all year, right? So they prided themselves on getting the press high up the field, really squeezing in the kick out. And when you're lung busting yourself and you're not willing to kick the ball and you're not kicking the ball, taking shots from 45 yards out, it's too hard to get the press. You're wrecked then when you're getting the press. So what you have to do when you're trying to press the team is you bloody have to shoot. You have to shoot the ball. And what Kerry did, Kerry got 30 shots and Tyrone got 30 shots. For the press to work, you need to be getting 10 shots more than everybody else. You have to, because if you're priding yourself on pressing the game up the pitch, you need to get the fellas into the position to get the press. But if you're trying to walk the ball in and you're every score is a hassle and it's either a bit of genius from Clifford or it's a lung busting run from someone coming through the middle, you can't do that for 70 minutes. You have to be willing to take a shot, bomb one into the hill, get yourself set up, bang, let the keeper try to kick it out over you. And that's the key thing. And Kerry did have Tyrone under pressure with the kick out, but they didn't make Morgan kick the ball out enough. And by the time when Morgan had the long kicks done, Kerry were out on their feet. They were actually out on their feet. I actually think Morgan's long kick out was another plan to absolutely bury Kerry, because he used to kick it. The Kerry boys used to try to overrun it, or the Tyrone boys used to try to overrun it. But Frank Burns used to never go out for the kick out. He used to stand in at centre half back. So Kerry got no scores really out of the long kick out. So Kerry used to run in with the press, bury it, and then have to run 50 yards back, leg it back again. Frank Burns used to stand. And it wasn't really costing Tyrone really anything.
And that's so interesting, because they were, Morgan's bombing out these long kickouts and Kerry are cleaning up on the breaks. And you're thinking, if you look at it from Kerry's perspective, you can say Clifford has superstar game as expected. They tie up Darren McCurry and Matty Donnelly to an extent. We dominate Morgan's kickouts and Tyrone play 20 minutes the second half of 14 men, and we still won't win this game. It's incredible. And that's what they will be kicking themselves with it. But that was just, Tyrone's plan was just executed to an absolute T. And as much challenge and maybe stick that Kerry are going to get for blowing it, you've got to hold your hands up and say Tyrone's performance, it was absolutely spectacular all over the pitch. The balls to go out and play that way, and then for the players to execute it, not just the athleticism and the intensity they had to play at to do that, but then to have the skill to go and do that and score whatever it was, three 3:14 or 3:15 as well. So it was a brilliant display from Tyrone, and we've seen it in both the semi-finals.
Both semi-finals, yeah.
Yeah, and that's why it's as much as everyone was hoping to see Dublin and Kerry in an All-Ireland final, and I'd love to. Should be a third and fourth place playoff, just so we can see Dublin play Kerry. How about it's like the minor match? But the All-Ireland final, it's going to be so fascinating. It really is, because they're two great stories from where Tyrone and Mayo have come from, and like I say, they are mental. Those two teams, their running game, their athleticism. And it's going to be brilliant to watch in 2 weeks' time.
Just on that, Morgan. Go on, jump in there, Andy. Yeah.
Just a bit of coaching point, right? When Clifford gets the ball in the first half, going into the hill, and he's going 1-on-1, he's going down, he's trying to get a goal where he probably shouldn't shoot for goal.
Yes.
Frank Burns comes across.
Paddy, it's not just Frank Burns' bit of defending, lads. Is for any young kid, if there's any coach or any young kid watching this, watch the way Frank Burns plays the sweeper on their road. He doesn't rush in. Clifford studied to an inch of his life. Clifford spots that it's Michael McKiernan. And he said, right, McNamee is out of the town here. I'm going for goal. And Burns just waits. He literally doesn't rush in. Like you see a sweeper doing that all the time. Rushes in. And what happens is he takes out McKiernan with himself, and Clifford steps around him and buries it into the bottom corner. He just waits, and he knows Clifford has to come out on the left leg. And he never gives him the angle. It was such a brilliant bit of defending, such a brilliant bit of being that extra man in there.
Michael O'Neill has a similar one in the second half from Sean O'Shea, where Sean O'Shea sees Hampsey and he's like, I'm going at this guy.
Yeah.
And Michael O'Neill just comes, he knows exactly what he's going to do. This is the thing I'm talking about, was preparation, knowing your opponent. He knows exactly what O'Shea is looking to do. And that's just brilliant. That's game smart.
That was...
And it's same with Frank Burns. He sees... I know what Clifford's going to try and do here, just shepherd across there and cut off the angle. And Michael O'Neill does it brilliantly on Sean O'Shea in the second half.
It looked scripted, Paddy. It looked scripted, didn't it?
That's intelligence. That's game plan. That's preparation. That's knowing he's going to, if Clifford or O'Shea, they're going to back themselves in one-on-one situations. And we touched on it last week. It wasn't going to be a case of just going to Hampsey or going to Ronan McNamee. You deal with Clifford on your own. All the best with that. They understood it was a collective effort that was going to get them over the line there. Peter Hart has an amazing block. It reminded me of Conor Gormley's block and Stephen McDonald back in the 2003 All-Ireland final, where Peter Hart comes across onto Killian Spillane as well.
That wasn't really on as well, though. I know we're talking about Kerry trying to force it. Like, that should have been flicked over the bar, right?
This is what happens, Tommy, when you're coming on and the game's not going for you. You're trying to make an impact. You start trying to force things. And Killian Spillane knows, not really getting into the game here. It's not as free-flowing as it was previously. You start your decision-making starts to go out the window a bit, and you try and force things through. And that was another example. I agree. I think you should just pop that over the bar.
He's one of those instinctive boys, Paddy, you were talking about last week, in terms of the guys that go for goal. Remember the one against the guys in
the one against us in the 19 final. Same thing.
Yeah, he was out of the sideline. Remember, he cut in and... Yeah, so it was interesting.
Yeah, there was a bit of ruthlessness like that in 2019, and maybe he was thinking, I've done it here before, I'm going to do it again. Maybe that was in the back of his head. Like, Andy, you mentioned Sean O'Shea earlier on and how he did it against Clare and he was going to burst through boys, and this is how he's playing football this year. It felt like he was trying to force it all day long. Like, Sean O'Shea is as highly regarded in many ways as David Clifford, and there's been times where Sean O'Shea has stood up when Clifford hasn't. Did it just not click for O'Shea the last day, or was he just trying to force it a bit too much?
When you're marking an exception, you're marking the Tyrone captain here. You're marking an Ulster champion captain who's been there for years and has marked Michael Murphy and Conor McManus in the big games and done really well on both of them. I don't think you're just going to. This is a learning curve, lads. This is a learning curve where Sean O'Shea has probably went away and he's seen the way he's been marked by Lee Keegan and all these guys, and he's come back and said, I need to change slightly, I need to get bigger, stronger, faster. And then he marks Hampsey. Now, I genuinely thought Hampsey would give it to him for 25 minutes, and I thought his running power would take him through it. But it didn't, because they always had, I wouldn't call it a +1, but it's a plus kind of a half one, where there's always someone on the cover. And the only time he got away from that cover was when Tommy Walsh created the collision, took two men out of it, and he was straight through. That was the only time he got away from that cover. And he did well, like he did well. But I would say if it was a boxing match on points, you'd give it to Hamsey. You definitely give the result. Yeah. I just thought, and never stop trying, lads. You have to give it to him. Never stop trying. But again, on third water break or second water break, you're looking down, and Dave Moran is down getting rubbed. Sean Shea was down getting rubbed. There was someone else down getting rubbed.
Sullivan.
I was kind of like, lads, this is happening. And I think we said it here in the house. We said, this reminds me of my OV Dublin here. Do you know, it did. Like you could nearly smell it at the second water break. Probably still thought Kerry should have enough to go and win it. But Tyrone just kept clipping it. It was amazing to see. And Paddy's mentioned it. But I wouldn't leave any very little fault on Sean O'Shea. Very little.
No.
Like he's just, you go out there, you mark the top guys. Joe, you need the guys around you to give you a bit of help. I thought he probably played it wrong and he should have come around. You know who I was thinking about, lads? I was thinking about James Donoghue. That's who I was thinking about. There's 65 minutes gone there. And I'm thinking, Tyrone or Kerry needs someone here to stop bloody running and go around the corner and kick the point.
You read my mind because I had a question for you, Andy.
Yeah, go on.
Tommy Walsh taking on that shot in the last minute, right? We talked about Monaghan so many times this year and how they found their clutch players in the last minute when they needed it. And Tommy Walsh, like he probably should have. People are saying drop the shoulder and try and win the free. It's tough. The buzzer's on there. Where were Kerry's clutch players? Okay, Clifford's on the bench. He's injured. Maybe Sean O'Shea's been tied up. And the man that I had in my head as well was young James O'Donoghue, James O'Donoghue, who obviously had that incredible year in 2014, and it just hasn't really worked for him since. Yeah,
and like you're talking 10, and that's probably where they use the subs wrong. If I'm being honest, that's probably where I would say I think even Spillane said at halftime, he said Michael Burns probably isn't the guy for this game, and I was like, you're right, he's not.
He's not a runner.
Could Burns have started and brought on Dara Moynihan? But the big one for me, lads, is David Moore. He's such a good footballer. Like he's such a good player. And you're thinking about 20 minutes there when the game is played at his pace. Like he could wreak havoc in a team. Like I know, geez, we're all, myself and Paddy were the same. We never want to be the 20-minute man. But at times, you're looking at Tyrone there and you're thinking, this guy is here. Let's put on Spillane here. Let him run after Conor Fitzpatrick and these guys. Let him just leg it around the place for 40, 45 minutes because he would do that. And let's bring on Moran for 20 and let's see what he could do. And Moran didn't play badly, but it's just when they needed him, he wasn't there. He was gone. The
game didn't suit him.
Yeah, and he still did well, like in terms of catching, kicking.
But isn't that that's the point what we're making? All Kerry's best players, bar Clifford, were like I say, they were all on the fringes of the game. It wasn't that, like I say, it wasn't a disaster with Sean O'Shea. It wasn't like he was fine. David Warren was fine. But they didn't dominate the game.
Yeah.
They didn't dominate, and Tyrone wouldn't allow them to do that. And Tommy Walsh comes on there, and I know exactly in his head, he knows he's been sloppy with his defending for McShane's first goal. He's struggling as well to get into the game, and then like he forces that shot at the end. Like that's a 2 out of 10 shot when they need it, and that's the thing. He feels he needs to try and force something and put something out of the bag, which just wasn't the right option at that time. It was never going to score, and the race was run. Like, but that's the challenge for subs coming in off the bench. Yeah. If it doesn't go well at the start, then do they start forcing things like Adrian Spillane or like Killian Spillane and Tommy Walsh did at the end there as well.
Sorry, I cut you off there when you're talking about James O'Donoghue. It's just that it was in my head as well. You were just making the point that he was just somebody they were missing, I suppose.
It's just that the little guy to come around the corner,
it's composure, Andy. It's just composure, getting the right man on the ball, and you could see it as the game became more and more frantic. That was not going to suit Kerry. Yeah. Now, to be fair, they still put a fist up on extra time, and the Tyrone go 1-2 to no score up in extra time, and thinking they're going to steamroll them here, and Kerry get back into it. Dermot O'Connor gets a point, and Sean O'Shea kicks a couple of frees, but like O'Donoghue there, there's that little bit of class, that little bit of composure when everyone else is going frantic around you, that he's going to get the ball 35 yards out in the loop, come off Tommy Walsh's shoulder, and he's going to kick the score.
Yeah.
And they missed that. And it's so rare. You're talking about Kerry and praising them so much this season that they were shooting the lights out in this free-flowing attacking game. And it just like they were not prepared. Tyrone's, like, I hate it, like a cliche, that the intensity Tyrone brought, they didn't allow Kerry to play that style.
Frank Burns set the tone, and I think it's fair to say that one of the players who had been said that had been affected badly by COVID was Frank Burns, and he set the tone by fecking Jack Barry over the line at the start of the game. And it happened twice on that sideline by Peter King. Peter King went nuts twice on the sideline. The linesman hadn't given them a line ball at one stage, and like, yeah, it was just incredible. Paddy, quick one for you. When Niall Morgan put that free over the bar just before half time, everyone was raving, saying it was the longest free they'd ever seen. I was sure I'd seen Brian Sheehan score a free from some ridiculous length before as well. Have you ever seen a kick from that distance? And
Not that far. I know she used to kick them. You could have just chipped them over from 50, 55 yards. Morgan, he's nearly on the halfway line.
Yeah.
But I was thinking, what is he going for this for? Like this, only the fact that it was injury time was going to be the last kick of the first half. I'm thinking, right, it's kind of a kick to nothing. I was like, what a score. And that puts them, they go in a point up at that stage. It was just a massive score. But the 45 at the end, the next, I mean, he misses that one. You're thinking, geez, if you kick it over from the halfway line and miss the easier one, the 45, but it was a phenomenal kick. I'd never seen someone from, like a puck out.
It's the first kick, I think it's the first one I've seen in Croker. There's an unbelievable McDonald kick in the North 4 final. We were getting well trimmed at the time. And he kicks it out of his hands. And I thought it was, but that kick,
outside the left, wasn't it?
Yeah, I remember him.
I can picture it.
I don't know how he kicked it, but like Morgan kicks this, and it's just, it was just incredible. I thought it was the daftest thing. And I thought, do you know what I thought was silly? Do you know the free Sean O'Shea takes at 50, like he's 55 out at the end of the game? Your legs tired, lads. That's a tough kick. I remember saying at the time, this is not the right option. Do you know, move that on quick. Do you know, try to get, like I just thought, and I think Tyrone get a score out of that. So it was, there was a few, but like Morgan's kick was incredible.
We're nearly an hour into episode 17 of the Football Pod with Paddy and Andy. We're going to get to a couple of Instagram questions in a minute. There was about 80 sent in to @footballpod_GA. Some we can read out, some we cannot. There's two players I want to chat about briefly before we move on from Tyrone. Andy, I'm going to start with you. Can you talk to me about what Conor Meyler did to Paddy Clifford? And not just to Clifford, like his whole game, the amount of discipline it took. He was so good on the ball, and I think Meyler is one of these players that kind of goes under the radar a wee bit because of the role that he plays for the team. But he did an unbelievable job and one of the most talked about players in the country so far this year. Yeah,
and I didn't think Paddy Clifford was bad, but I just thought it's not even what he did. Like what fascinates me about the Tom O'Sullivan role and the Conor Meyler role in the game was the discipline to do what them guys did. Is just it's incredible. It's incredible. Like I will tell you, I played football. Geez, how many years? 16 or 17 years, whatever. And I would never have the discipline to do that level of a role in terms of man marking, in terms of just being so selfless in terms of what he gave the team. And I just, do you know what epitomized it for me? I know this is silly, but do you know when Paddy Clifford punches it wide for the last play? Meyler just stands over him and just clinches the two fists as much as to say, you know, I'd say he was dreading it.
I'm with you. He was with him everywhere.
Yeah, he's done 76 minutes. This fella chips the ball up. Beautiful bit of skill coming in. And Meyler's still there to get the hand in after an epic battle. And I just thought that epitomized it. And again, he's been used correctly. Like I've seen him being used as a wing back and been ran across the line. He's not good at that. I've seen him used as a wing forward and tried to get a score getter and be a set. He's not that. Now all of a sudden, being a tagger, watching the man and linking the play, I'd say he could do it all day, every day.
But Randy, that's the nail on the head there. The sacrifice. You're sacrificing your game for the team. You're being told, and you're right, not every player can do that or will have the mentality to do that. Ego gets in the way, and it's like, well, I want to put my own stamp on it. I said, no, your role for the team here is tag him everywhere. Everywhere. So you need to physically be able to do that because Paddy Clifford can run all day. So you need to have that right. But your mentality as well. You need to never switch off. And like I said, that's 77 minutes and he's still there. Not once does he switch off. And that's what I was praising Tyrone in terms of the bravery to play that style of play, to push up and tag everywhere. Because literally, if one player switches off, for one play and just gets lazy and doesn't have the discipline, or doesn't stick to the script, that's the overlap Kerry are looking for. And then you can see Kerry's running game kicks in, and that's where they're starting to score their goals and things like that. But Meyler was just the epitome of what Tyrone were doing, and just having the mentality, the focus, the discipline, and totally just sacrificing his own game. It's like, I'm going to take out Paddy Clifford. That's my job for the team. It's not glamorous, but it was a brilliant, brilliant display from him. And like I say, probably touch and go if he could have got man of the match himself as well. But he had a massive, massive influence in that game. And like Paddy Clifford, he's taken out of the game, and he comes into it towards the end. He does score 2 points himself, which isn't bad. But you see how important it is that he wasn't a link player. Kerry couldn't get the ball up the pitch as quickly as they were hoped, and that all just snowballs and plays into Tyrone's hands as well. But it was a brilliant, brilliant job from Moan.
Paddy, talk to me about my boy Conor McKenna. Called it last week. He was going to have a big influence in this game. Maybe not exactly the way I thought it would go. I thought he'd run the pitch at the start of the game and bury it in the top corner.
It's
big
funny,
moments.
Yeah. He didn't do a lot, and he scores 2 goals. So I tell you, I'd be happy enough with that. If looking back at my career, I was quiet and engaged, but I got 2 goals out of it. But no, he kind of played inside a bit more, and Matty Donnelly came out to play around the middle and play at 11, which I thought worked for Tyrone. I just think he seems to be a moment's player. If you're looking at all the games he's in, he's not a player like a McGeary or a Matty Donnelly where he's so comfortable on the ball and he's going to dominate possessions and things like that. He works for the team, and his tracking and his work rate and his tackling and all those type of things are exemplary. But he was kind of on the fringes of the game. He wasn't getting on a lot of ball at all, but his persistence, and he pops up at the end with a brilliant first goal. It was a brilliant play by Niall Sludden, and you can watch Niall Sludden when he gets that ball. He just waits to draw the man and then injects the pace and puts it on a play. It's brilliant. Sludden, who was actually relatively quiet himself, that was a brilliant play.
I also thought McKenna's rolling that goal. He checks his run. He has the hand out looking for where he wants it. I just thought he did very well in that. Just kind of composing yourself inside that chaotic 20-yard line, being able to just step back, look for the ball here and sidestep the keeper.
But that's what you're saying. That's what Kerry were lacking in extra time at the end of that composure, but wasn't there. It was panic. And I thought that was a brilliant goal. And I think it was brilliant from Sludden to put him in. But McKenna, I think if a similar role in the All-Ireland final, that he's popped up with big moments. His athleticism was definitely going to be needed against this Mayo team. And you're thinking, I don't know, Andy, like, would you play him inside? I don't think that's really, I don't think that's a great position for him to play him in close to goal with McCurry and bring Matty Donnelly out. I just feel he'd be better nearly in a similar role to McGeary, where he's kind of coming from the half back line and he's just this powerful runner getting on the ball. I thought he was on the fringes of the game, but like I say, he pops up for 2 goals, so I don't think he'd be overly concerned.
I think he's a confusing one for Mayo in general, because he's one of these guys who could make you, like, he's obviously a natural forward from when he was a kid, but he's like, he didn't play Gaelic football for 6 years. That's what he's doing is incredible. It's incredible, right? So one of these awkward ones that could leave a Matty Rowan or Conor Loftus or Diarmuid O'Connor on the full back line marking a natural forward. And remember me and Paddy were on about the mismatches in the forward line. He is one of those guys because he finds himself anywhere. Like it's just, it's like Breen ended up marking one of the midfielders. I don't know which one it was. One of the midfielders for kick out. Yeah. So then who's marking McKenna then? Joe, was he on David Moran at that stage? So he's one of these guys that could create mismatches everywhere, because he could find himself, as we've seen in the throw-in, he could see himself at centre forward, he could see himself at corner forward, he could see himself as that when McCurry and Donnelly are inside full forward. He could be the one out in front of them. So he's awkward for a team to actually, like, if you're saying who are we going to match up with this guy, he's a to match up with. And he was lucky not to get sent off, if I'm being honest. If he catches Paul Murphy with the fist, he's gone. But in terms of what he's doing in the game, he's a huge player for Tyrone. His work rate, lads, the last day was incredible. Like, it was, we praised.
Really, were you looking at that? Could you see that?
You could. Like, even when he ran after Gavin White and fell over, like that. Jesus, he couldn't give any more. Like he was literally burning up. He obviously spotted that his buddy was out of the game, Kerry, and he just went after him. And they were like, he couldn't.
He looked like he was gone at one stage as well. I think the shoulder seemed to go on him. He looked to be in a right bit of pain, you know?
He got the shoulder from giving Murphy the little jab.
Yeah.
He was lucky there because if he makes contact there, you'd
want to have good solicitors in Tyrone camp to get him off for the All-Ireland final if that happened.
If only they had, you know. But it's he's an incredible player. And he's added to Tyrone. He came down and played Mayo last year in the National League. He was really, really good that day. It didn't work out for him in the championship, but he's definitely added because he's added a thing. He's added something where you're kind of thinking, who do we put on this fella? Like you have to mark Donnelly, you have to mark you have to mark Joe, you have to mark Paddy Hart, you have to mark all these fellas, and then you have this fella who's you don't really know where he's going to play. Yeah. Like where does he play? Like nobody, like I don't know where he plays, but he finds himself in this transition again, what Paddy mentioned, legging it up, and then all of a sudden he's at full forward, and he's marking maybe a midfielder, like where Jack Barry found himself with Tyrone and McCann. It was Jack Barry against Tyrone and McCann and McKenna. Joe, Jack Barry doesn't mistake what he does, but like he had to leg it 80 yards again to mark these two guys, you know. Yeah. Before we move on from I think we have to touch on the narrative that Tyrone wanted this more. Jeez, I hate that narrative, lads. Like, Kerry, absolutely, they might have got it wrong in terms of the way they wanted to play, the way they conserved their energy, and the way they minded Clifford a bit more to keep him on the pitch. But, like, they gave everything they could give to that game, like, and more. Like, they literally ran themselves to cramp, basically, ran themselves to oblivion. So I just don't buy this. They don't have the backs, they don't have the dogs, they don't have the appetite. Tyrone wants them more. Nonsense. It's absolutely nonsense. So
you don't think they were hungrier, no?
Are you telling me
that's bullshit? But it is, and it's such a compliment. It's like the history is written by the winners. Do you know what I mean? So a couple of small things go Kerry's way, and it's the stories about Tyrone, and did COVID have too much of an impact on them? And Peter King, what a brilliant job, and they're going in his favourites against Mayo. It's the margins are so small, and it's like
the first question Sunday night was about hunger, and they didn't necessarily bat it away, you know.
So Kerry didn't want to win that game. That's bullshit. They were like I say, they were probably out taught, and some of the tactics that what Logan do were implemented, and the game plan was carried out a little bit better by Tyrone, but it wasn't down to. So you look at extra time there; it's like a war zone. Yeah. Some of the Kerry lads didn't want that. There was lads panned out everywhere.
Kerry's comeback. Kerry went what? Did Kerry go 7 down and they got it back to a point?
5 down. It was 1-2 to no score in extra time, and they get it back. So no, like they left everything out there. There's not an issue of hunger or anything like that. I just think they were just outsmarted, and a couple of the big moments went to Tyrone's way. Like I say, Tyrone's key players had more of an impact than Kerry's key ones, and that's the difference. You're hoping your biggest players will have the biggest impact on the game. And if you look at the influence that McGeary, that Peter Hart, that Matty Donnelly, even though not in a scoring sense, but the influence they had on the game, they had the big moments. And Kerry, bar outside David Clifford, and we say Thomas Sullivan, particularly first half. Who else did they have really that performed well? That's the most frustrating thing for them, but that's not a thing of hunger. I totally agree with Andy on that.
When you have your star man covering, I'd say he covered about 10.5K, 11K, and he cramps to a point where he can't even continue. You have your full back line, Thomas Sullivan, Foley, both cramped. They're full backs and full forward. Like, that's an insane effort. Like, it's an insane effort.
I was actually wondering whether it was a dead leg that he got from the collision with Morgan rather than cramp. I know he was down with cramp then after that, but maybe it's hard to know. And as well on top of that, like if Gainey and O'Brien don't butcher that goal chance, you know, it could be a very different game going into that second half as well. Andy, just on that, let's start with our Instagram questions from the Football Pod listeners. I'm going to jump straight into it because Tomás O'Shea didn't hide away from it on the Sunday game, and I was listening to Jack O'Connor on the Examiner podcast with Paul Rouse a little earlier, and he was throwing his hat into the ring straight away. Sean
man,
Brennan
Jack.
wants to know what next for Kerry? ? A more tactically astute manager ? Like, is that harsh on Peter Keane?
Again, like, I hope to enter this fray at some stage. So it's all right for Paddy. I'm not sure he wants to go down this route, but no, I like. Of course, like Peter Keane is not a foolish man. He owns businesses. He's a smart guy. He knows that he is going to have to fight for his job here if he wants to keep hold of it. There's plenty of people there that can see you can't say a once in a lifetime in generational player in Kerry. Clifford is absolutely, like, I'd say if you're asking Ronan McNamee this morning, I'd say he'd start laughing at you. He'd say he's just like, I can't do much more, you know. He's a special player with good compliments around him in terms of the players. But there is going to be people are going to look for change there. I do feel people are going to look for change. I think it's already happened when you see ex-players, ex-managers coming out. I think the situation. I think Maurice Fitz. I think Peter Keane. I think all these guys, Tommy Griffin. I think all of them are very smart guys, and they know what's coming. You know.
Well, we're seeing an incredible amount of change and flux in inter-county management circles at the minute. Like, we know that Declan Bonner himself has to reapply for his own job after his 3-year term. Keane has gone through a 3-year term. 2019 All-Ireland final. 2020 he has to fight for his job that winter after the Cork game. And now this year again. So it remains to be seen what will happen. I'm not sure whether going back to Jack O'Connor is the way to go. Jack O'Connor was talking earlier on about in his first 4 years, 04, 05, 06, 09, he won 3 All-Irelands, 3 league titles, 3 Munster titles, and he got dogs abuse the whole time while he was Kerry manager. O'Connor was definitely interested back 3 years ago, you know.
It's a good way to get the Kerry people on side.
Jeez.
I know.
Yeah. I know, Jack.
But are they going to go back to Jack O'Connor, or are they going to be looking at some of the new boys that are coming through? Like, there's a couple of younger lads from the noughties that have started dipping their toe in management, like Quirk, Donaghy, Declan O'Sullivan.
I just have this bad image in my head that Tommy Rooney and Paddy Andrews are going to be here and saying, Moran doesn't have a clue.
Get him out. Bomb him out. 6 games in.
Hey, as long as you keep us sweet with interviews, we'll be okay, Andy. Don't worry.
This is going to be a sore one for Kerry, particularly the fact that with Dublin being beaten, and the standard in Kerry is All-Ireland titles or nothing. That's their baseline. If you are the coach of the team and you don't win the All-Ireland, you are under pressure. And Fitzmaurice said the same thing. He won an All-Ireland in 2014. And Dublin, we're saying if Dublin don't win the All-Ireland, there's questions there. And that's, I feel, I see Tomas's comments on the Sunday game, he's putting no punches on it. But Peter Keane has been there for 3 years and hasn't delivered an All-Ireland. So, and I like, particularly with Dublin being beaten last week, Kerry this is it. We have to win the All-Ireland back. And they've come up short again. And if you look at the biggest games, any of the tight games, they lost to Dublin in 19, they lost to Cork last year, and they lose another tight game against Tyrone. So I think questions will be asked. It's hard to know. There's no rush in these things, but I'm going to say people are already starting to put their name in the hat. It'll be interesting to see what happens over the next couple of months.
Andy, I know Kerry have traditionally had the hex on 31 of their counties, or whatever way you want to put it. You obviously had the epic semi-final replay against them in 14. You bet them in 17. Kerry have lost a lot of big games over the last 7 or 8 years. Have they lost their aura of invincibility a wee bit? Whether that ever really existed. Like, this is one of the longest droughts, 7 years that they've gone through. I think there was 11 years in the 86 to 97.
97, yeah.
7 years is a long time in Kerry football to go that in All-Ireland. Did you feel that in 17? Was there any psychological thing there going into that game at all? Did you feel that at all? Your Mayo team?
That was a huge win for us, Mayo in general, because again, I was playing since 2003. We'd never bet Kerry in a championship match in Croke Park at that time. So that was a huge game. Like, we kind of half butchered the first game. We probably should have won it, and then to win it the second day was massive. I remember Neil Fitzpatrick doing unbelievable work for us. The psychologist just
really
mentally preparing us for Kerry and Dublin at that time too, which was brilliant for us at the time. But I'll tell you, right, okay, and this is, again, I rate Tom O'Sullivan unbelievably highly. Foley's a right good player. Tadhg Morley, how he doesn't start, I don't know. I think he's a really good player. And these guys, Murphy, class player. Gavin White, class player. But they do lack that Kerry team and outrageously good backs, lads. Outrageously good backs. Like you had Tom Sullivan, the old Tom Sullivan. Like, the real Ronaldo.
The real Ronaldo, yeah.
But like
the real Tom Sullivan.
I swear to God, I used to love having Mort playing in the league games down in Kerry because Tom Sullivan used to mark Mort, and you used to have to mark him. You know, you'd mark O'Shea, who'd trouble you going the other way. Mike,
What did the real Tom Sullivan do that he was so good?
Massive, and he was quick as hell. You know, he was fast.
Just a brilliant defender. Brilliant defender. I think you're right, Andy. He kind of went under the radar. Mark O'Shea got a lot of the praise, and then Tomas was obviously wing back. But
he was a bit like Sean Marty Lockhart, actually. To be honest, if I'm being tough as nails, like me as a young fella, like Paulie O'Shea throw you out over the thing like a loaf of bread, like he had to peg you out of the way. Like Mike McCarthy, outstanding player. Seamus Moynihan, outstanding player. Aidan O'Mahony, outstanding player. Do you know, they're really, really strong backs, like, and they probably lack that a slight bit at the minute, where the likes of McShane can come on there in the last 20 and really cause trouble. In around the middle of the field, their mobility, Joe, like you have Darragh O'Shea's around there at the time, you know, like huge players, like, but the likes of Scanlon and these guys used to do massive work. Massive work, and they used to do real damage to us because they used to catch principal ball and then get it. Declan O'Sullivan and Gooch on it, you know. So and Donny on it. So yeah, listen, it's. I don't think they're far away. I thought they were the best team in the country this year. I think I openly kind of said that. I don't think they got much wrong last Saturday evening.
Yeah,
but ultimately they're out of the championship.
Stephen McCracken wants to know, should they move McKenna to half back high? So he must be Tyrone fella. We kind of spoke about McKenna in depth here. Rob O'Malley has said Mayo will bring Sam home. I won't admit, or I won't read out the other 20 messages we got about that. Sean McDonough, McShane has a major impact off the bench, and Kerry didn't take their goal chances. I think that's very clear. A. McGill 84, what an epic game. I can't wait to hear the lads' thoughts on it. Meyler was key for me. How difficult will it be for Tyrone to recover from that and replicate the same intensity for the final in 13, 14 days' time?
Go on, Paddy.
I don't think it'll be that hard for them at all, because that's their style of play. That they've delivered that throughout the Ulster Championship. They blew Cavan away physically. Cavan were gone after 20 minutes in that game. We praised them. I know Donegal went down to 40 men, obviously Michael Murphy, but Tyrone ran them off the pitch too. And that is their style of play. That's their blueprint. And I touched on it last week when we were discussing Mayo and their victory against Dublin. If you have that mentality, if you have that athleticism, and if you have that kind of bravery in your play, that's a brilliant DNA for a team to have. That gives you a chance. And that's Tyrone bring that every single time they play. It's not like they come out of the woodwork here and they've done something completely off the wall. I think, yes, they were a little bit braver in their tactics, but in terms of their athleticism, their intensity, that is what Tyrone bring. And the fact, lads, Andy touched on this, this is a monumental chance for both of these teams to win an All-Ireland. No one in the country was saying Tyrone or Mayo are going to win this All-Ireland. It's Dublin and Kerry, and those players will know. They've climbed Everest. For Mayo to beat Dublin and Tyrone to take out this Kerry team, they are massive wins. But in terms of being able to get up for the game in 2 weeks' time and match that intensity level, this is maybe not once in a lifetime, but it's a huge, huge opportunity for one of these counties to get their hands on Sam Maguire. And not many people, if any, in the country were tipping either of these guys at the start of the season. So they're not going to have an issue with getting up and being ready to play.
There was one huge play which symbolises the importance of not having Dublin in the championship, right? For McKenna's first goal, right? I think Jack Barry runs through, loses the ball, Hampsey takes it off him. Hampsey pegs it away.
Clifford lost the ball.
It is not the Clifford time.
Clifford loses.
He loses the ball. The difference here is, lads, Paddy has said it, like, this is chaos now. This is chaos. It was chaos there the last day. It's going to be chaos in 2 weeks' time. And I know each team will try to take the chaos out of it. But lads, we've got an opportunity here for both teams. And like, I'm absolutely, like, I'm going to be very struggle to be unbiased next week, I have to say.
I can't wait for next week.
Okay, because you're looking at me here, I'm smiling since this pod started, because this is chaos. This is opportunity. This is opportunity for both teams, because each team is going to have the chance to go and win this game. And it's who takes the chances are going to win it. And the last day, when that turned over, Jack Barry loses it, Hampsey pegs it away on the 45. Clifford then missed solos because he's covered about 8K in 35 minutes.
Yeah.
And McKenna goes up and scores a goal. Tyrone and Mayo are both going to get them chances. And it's who takes the chances. And against Dublin, lads, you literally, if Dublin were playing the All-Ireland final next week, you literally would not get them chances. They would just hold on to the ball and they'd kill you and they'd beat you 15-10 and they'd be happy out.
Can I bring you back to 2012, Andy? Yeah. I don't know if you were reading the Irish Indo today, but Vincent Hogan's written a piece to sort of set up the All-Ireland final. And he's talking about your Mayo team and perhaps how timing got in the way of them ending Mayo's famine. They come up against the greatest team we've ever seen in Paddy's Dublin. And he said, speaking at their post-match function in the Regency Hotel after the 2012 final, team captain Andy Moran drew rapturous applause for a speech running to the very core of what the modern Mayo have come to represent. The only failure, I think, in football or in life is the failure to come back again, said Moran. Like so many other teams in Mayo, we were in 89, 96, 97, 04 and 06, and we always came back. And I guarantee you this team will come back again, which of course Mayo did over the next couple of years. But Mayo have been rooted on 3 All-Ireland titles since the 50s. Tyrone are on 3 All-Ireland titles, the 3 that they won in the noughties. Jesus Christ. I bet you're not, you must be hoping that speech does not have to happen again.
Where did Vincent Hogan pull that out? Was he active?
Is it true?
I can't tell you. I've had a few of those speeches. But that's lads, honestly, no, like, and I'm going to go a bit Mayo-ness here now. Sorry, Paddy, I'm going to get all hillbilly on you here, but that's us. Like that's Mayo. That's not football. That's Mayo people in general. And I've seen it over the last, since 2008 when the decline happened in the economy and every streets in Castlebar, Clamart, Ballina, all the main streets were all closed, boarded up, and they've fought their way back, like many small towns around the country. But that's the way we view ourselves. We view ourselves of a county that would, I suppose, be in the doldrums at times, and we always kind of fight our way back. And listen, we keep coming, and like I think I've said over the last couple of weeks, from the Galway game, particularly the Dublin game, you'd be very proud to have any representation with the football team, and that's why we're a bit daft, we're a bit naive in our thinking. That's why we'd be excited now about the All-Ireland final again. That's why we don't fear them, because we're thinking, sure, if we're not going to try to beat Dublin, who is going to try? You know, we were always the ones that put ourselves out there and gave it our all. We just weren't good enough. My team weren't good enough. But I feel this team definitely represents what I suppose what was said back then. And I think we've really, I think we've a real chance here. I think Tyrone are definitely looking at it the same. But I just think, and I said it last week, I as a player never got that winning mentality. I never got over the line as a Mayo footballer, minor, 21, senior. But these guys have. These guys have got over that line, and I think this is their time.
Very well put. And you've set us up very nicely for next week's football pod. I'm really looking forward to it, Andy. And I don't know how you're going to keep yourself in check next week. Like,
I'm excited to see him. How excited he is. I can actually just get the sense of it.
I was gonna ask Paddy, like, the fact that the Dublin game was 2 weeks ago and there's now 4 weeks to the All-Ireland final, there's the fact that the emotion from that Dublin game can be parked and left to one side, and now Mayo have 2 weeks clean. Like, Tyrone will have a bit of emotion to set aside from that Kerry win. There has to be a wee bit of an aftermath from a massive, like, that's a massive, massive win for Tyrone against Kerry. Emotionally, it has to be big. Like, it has to have a bit of an impact for a couple of days. Like, surely Mayo now have a clean 2 weeks here.
Well, and I love James Horn. They had their media, All-Ireland media night straight away after the Dublin game. We used to do that ourselves. We literally have it the day after the semi-final. And it allows you to just get focused on what we need before Mayo. And get excited. It'll be absolutely mental build-up down there. But you have to remember, Mayo were in the All-Ireland final last year. You know what I mean? These players had experienced this. It was obviously a bit different. It was Christmas time. There was no fans and things like that. But that experience for those players, those younger players, is massive. That they're not arriving into the All-Ireland final, as Andy said, they're not daunted by it. And whatever about it, they've beaten Dublin. They've taken out the team that hadn't lost a championship match in 7 years. The confidence that gives them, the experience and know-how of James Horan and those key players. This is not their first rodeo. They lost last year's final. They'll be focused. And as much as we said, Tyrone will have a game plan for Kerry, Mayo will have a plan for the All-Ireland final. But on the flip side as well, I expect Tyrone to be, they were in the All-Ireland final in 2018. A lot of those guys played against us. They felt it.
11, is it?
11 of them started, I think, yeah.
Yes. So again, a lot of those were experienced. Brian Dillon for Logan played in All-Ireland finals, that they've won under 21 All-Irelands with some of those guys as well. So look, both teams are absolutely there on merit. They both put in massive performances to get over the line against the two red-hot favourites in their semi-finals. But preparing for an All-Ireland final, now is focused. The job is not done. And as big as those wins are for Mayo and Tyrone, you need to go out and perform. You need to prepare as much as you can, and you need to cut out the bullshit that can go with an All-Ireland final, all the media stuff. Fans are back to ticket requests. You're thinking about the banquet. You're thinking about all the going on holidays after the All-Ireland, all this type of stuff. You need to park that. That all needs to be gone, and that's the role of the coaches and the experienced players. And I feel both teams will be. I expect two massive performances again for them, because I don't think it's going to be too much of an issue.
There was always a machine-like element to Dublin, and I'm not necessarily sure that was as true. I think it was maybe masked a little bit. Did the emotion ever get to you in the build-up to All-Ireland finals?
No. We like I say, we were pretty
How
good.
How about the five? Was there any weight on the 5 in a row?
Not really. Like we were, and we stick to the process was our thing, and Jim was brilliant at that. That was part of Jim Gavvin's genius, more so than his on-field coach or anything like that. It was the environment that was created there. It is essentially, and I touched on it the last couple of weeks. It's tunnel vision. Is this going to help me perform on Sunday week in the All-Ireland final? And if the answer is no, or if it's even a question mark about it, then we just avoided it. Didn't read the media, didn't get involved in it. People are looking for tickets for the All-Ireland final. You get 26 and they'll be gone the week of the semi-final. Literally, we get our tickets, we do the media night on the Monday night, you get your tickets that week and you give them out and they're gone. And that's the requests are finished then. Stay off social media, all those type of things. We felt that worked for us. Some players, you want to enjoy it, you want to kind of embrace it, because this is the biggest game of these guys' lives, and there's tradition there, and you want to try and enjoy it as well. But we were quite ruthless and quite clinical in how we're preparing for those games, and that worked for us, you know. And I feel that from looking at the outside that James Horan gives off that impression as well, and that's everything I've seen since the semi-final. Looks like that's the road they're going to go down. And actually, Tyrone are no mugs either. They've players who experienced this 2 or 3 years ago. They've won underage All-Irelands as well. They'll be ready to go. But it's easy to get distracted if you're not experienced, or if you're younger players, or the coaches. It's not coming from the top down. But I think both of these teams will be very, very diligent in their preparation, and they'll be ready to go.
And I think that's where Horn's experience comes in.
Massively.
It's huge. Now, I would still prefer the 2 weeks going into the final. Not just as a player point of view, but you have no time to think about it. You're literally you're straight in now. You're like, as Paddy says, your tickets are gone already. They'll have Fergal Logan, and they'll have one player who they absolutely trust out doing the media noise. That'll be it. That'll be it done, you know, and it'll be done, and they'll just kind of move on with it. So,
I've one last question for Paddy, but Andy, I want to ask you a quick question. I never thought I'd start the podcast with it this week, so there was no worries in that regard, but I did think I'd get to it a little earlier. Meath are minor champions for the first time since 1992.
I was waiting for this.
Tom O'Connor was in touch, and he wanted a full hour. I couldn't provide him that. he wanted, you know, a new power rankings to be done by Owen Sheehan to get Meath right back up there. But Andy, can I ask you what you made of them this week after you've watched them 2 weeks in a row?
I thought it was just like I think it's clear. Myself and Paddy love the game, the Gaelic football. I probably overemphasize that at times, but like over the last, I suppose, month, we've been absolutely spoiled with two of the best semi-finals, best product semi-finals we've had. Maybe not quality-wise, but in terms
they were pretty good.
In terms of impact, intensity, people talking about our game, and then a minor game of the same
punch. It was up and down.
I was unbelievable. It was like them guys are 16, 17 years of age and they're kicking points with outside the right foot. The young lad, what's the young fella's name I have him there?
Are you talking Sean Leonard or are you talking Conor Ennis?
Sean Leonard.
Sean Leonard. Forward from me.
Yeah.
No, number 10, the curly hair.
He gives
the winner, yeah.
Gives away the free for them to equalise.
Yeah.
He has to be heartbroken. Next ball, like you can only do it if you're 16 or 17. He throws a little shimmy on the right leg and buries it over the bar. Your man, Huey misses one like what Gainey did, but he went for the shot himself. Next ball, outside the left, like a little golf shot.
It was unbelievable.
Score. And it was just brilliant. Gavin Delvin's young fella from Thing is run off
the
goal. Joe, there was just brilliant playing, and then it's just it's like the quality of the games. When we get a game and a product which is fair, which is the same quality against the same quality, wow, do we have a game? Do we have a game? And we do. And if the GA, I'm not going back on it, but we can go back on it maybe when the championship is over.
Yeah.
But if they can't see now what we need to do, it's crazy. Like because you're just having two epic semi-finals. You've had a really strong minor championship. Your under 20s with Offaly coming and Roscommon coming in the 20s. Brilliant games. Joe, what else do we need to do? You know?
The characters coming out of those teams as well is something that's really refreshing to see as well. Like there's real there's a fearlessness and they're not afraid to have a bit of crack as well, it seems. So it's great to see them.
Perm half forward line. No, you don't have a perm. But
something else, isn't it? Jeez.
Emmanuel and Leonard had a perm in their hair. You know?
Class. And after you made the Jap Finlay comparison with Emmanuel, I can't get it out of my head. Just the manner in which he runs with the ball and he drops onto the left foot. Class to see, and hopefully we see a lot more from some of these Meath footballers. I think looking back in the 92 team, Trevor Giles obviously was the star. Paul Shanky from Cumain and Wood would have played a lot for the Meath senior teams and won All Irelands. Brendan Murphy as well, and there was a couple of others too. Paul Nestor was involved. So you never know how many. You never know how many are going to come true. There was a chance.
Stop another hour. This is
if it was another planet and I'm nearly finished and Kerry had hammered Tyrone at the weekend, there was a chance that we would have started this podcast with Cristiano Ronaldo. Because I'll tell you one thing, Andy, by hook or by crook, myself and yourself will be in Croke Park on September 11th. But there's one place that Paddy Andrews is going to be at 3 o'clock that day, and it's not Croke Park. Paddy,
my wife might say no. Go on.
Paddy, what are you gonna tell your loyal listeners? Where are you going to be on September the 11th?
Well, look, this is the GAA change of the schedule. I thought September 11th, weekend free there. I'm in Old Trafford for Man United, Newcastle. Blessed, got tickets there about 2 or 3 weeks ago when the fixtures came out. Just had to be a mundane. The All Ireland final was obviously meant to be this weekend.
This weekend.
And it was moved. So I thought, look, typical GAA, the schedule always changes last minute. I'll be there for Ronnie's debut, enjoying it. So I'll just follow you lads on Twitter for scores from the All Ireland. Although I think
All Ireland's still 5, so you have to find a pub in Manchester.
Yeah, that shouldn't be an issue.
Kevin Kilbane will find you one. Kevin lived in Manchester for years. He'll find you a pub to watch the game.
Excellent. With a load of Mayo fans, lovely. Man United Ronaldo jersey. Yeah.
I don't know, Andy. The golden ticket there. Paddy has a choice here. I don't know whether he'd make more money selling a ticket for Ronaldo's debut for a United fan, or selling it to a Mayo fan or a Tyrone fan who can't get to this All Ireland final because there's only 40,000 there. So, look, you're very lucky either way. Next week on the Football Pod in episode 18, lads, we are going to be looking at the matchups. Andy, you said earlier on that it's very hard to tell. You're going to have to do a bit of homework during the week and you're going to have to come to the table Bring your excitement, but bring the tactical insights too. I want to know who you think is going to be picking up who. Paddy the same, even though anytime we give Paddy Andrews homework, he never bloody does it. We're also going to be picking. Now listen up, Paddy. We're going to be picking our all-stars so far. So we are going to have our all-star team so far. You can make changes after the All-Ireland final naturally enough because it's going to have such a big impact. But I want to hear who you're.
There has to be an element in that team where the All-Ireland final decides it.
Of course it does.
Yeah.
So, but you pick your team so far, though. Set it up for me. Okay.
Right. Okay. Yeah. I'll get on that.
All right.
Squeeze
okay.
Squeeze it into my busy schedule.
I'll remind you about the homework during the week. There were a load of questions in. Some of them were like Connolly 1389. Can you buy Tyrone flags anywhere in Galway, please?
That's for the wrong man here.
There's a business plan for us, Patrick.
David Hussey wants to know: have Tyrone given any indication on what date they intend to fulfill the All-Ireland final fixture? Killian Moran wants to know: will Mayo give away as many turnovers, and how can they avoid them? Let's talk about that next week. And B Trainer 93: why do you think that Mayo were a bogey team for Tyrone? Is this true? Are Mayo a bogey team for Tyrone?
Are we? In the league, we have a very funny record in the league. We used to nearly always win in Healy Park, and they used to always win in McKenna Park, which was strange when we used to go every second year. And then in the championship, I was thinking about this. We bet them in 16 and 13. They bet us in 08, and we bet them in 04.
Okay,
so,
it's well set. There's no psychological hang-ups. There's no real history.
No, and the big thing about it is I didn't realise that so many of the Tyrone team played in 18. So both teams have an advantage. Like, no one is disadvantaged by not playing. Do you know that sort of way? So, like, we obviously got last year, Tyrone got 18. So, it's literally all for the taking.
Andy, I'm telling you, if you hang around with us in the football pod next year, Gaelic football in 2022 is going to be the biggest sport in the world because, like, you're going to have Dublin coming back with a vengeance, Kerry coming back with a point to prove, and one of Mayo or Tyrone defending their All-Ireland title. Next week on the Football Pod, tune in, download the OTP Sports app, or subscribe wherever you listen, and get us next Tuesday or Wednesday. This week, share the podcast if you're enjoying it, and let your friends know. Thanks very much for listening. Paddy and Andy, thanks a million for your time this evening.
Right, lads.